Because
So, okay, I will start the presentation from 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone, all of G class member. So we from the group 6 will start our presentation about phonology, the sound patterns of language. So before we get into the material, we will introduce ourselves first, and then we will start first.
Hello, my name is Nikomang Dewa Yuni with study ID number 211202111X7.
And me, my name is Nikomang Dianovianti with student ID number 21120212101.
And me, introduce my name is Katapila Agustini with student ID number 211202120. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is about our name and our student ID number. So next, we will get into the material. So the first material is about the pronunciation of morphemes, plurals that will present. So for Dewi, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Novi. Okay. Number one, sometimes certain morphemes are pronounced differently depending on their context. Two, for example, that English plural morpheme has 3 different pronunciation depending on what noun you attach it to. It gets pronounced as a Z for words like caps, bags, and bars, and get pronounced as a S for words like cap, bags, and fade, and get pronounced as a is for words like buzz and grass. Okay, number 3, to determine a rule for when each variant of the plural morpheme or allomorph is used, it is useful to create a chart to examine the phonological environment in which each allomorph occurs. Allomorph Z environment after cape, cats, bags, for example, capes, bags, and capes, cats, and bags. Allomorph S environment after cat, caps, for example, cats, caps. Allomorph is environment after bus, for example, buses. To help us figure it out what is different between the phonological environment of the words that take the S, Z, and A's allomorph, we can look for minimal pairs. A minimal pairs is 2 words with different meaning that are identical except for one sound that occur in the same place in each word. Minimal pairs whose members take different forms of plural allomorph are particularly helpful for our purposes. For example, cap and cap different only by their final sound. So since each word takes a different allomorph, we can assume that allomorph is selected based on the final round of the noun. Five, now we can make our chart a little more succinct since we know we are looking only at the final sound of each noun. Allomorph Z is environment after B, D, G, V, M, and L. Allomorph S environment after P, T, K, F. Allomorph is environment after S and Z. Then we can make generalization after the environment in which its allomorph occurs based on knowledge of natural classes. Z occurs after voiced non-sibilant segment. S occurs after voiceless non-sibilant segment. is occurs after sibilant segments. Six, we can simplify this even more by creating a rule that assumes Z is the basic or underlying form the plural. Then we have two rules to explain why the author allomorphs occur. Insert a E after the plural morpheme Z when a regular noun ends in sibilant giving is. Change the plural morpheme Z to a voiceless S when preset by a voiceless round. These rules must be ordered so that rule 1 applies by rule 2, otherwise we would derive an incorrect phonetic form. The particular phonological rules that determine the phonetic form of morphemes are morphophonemic rules.
So thank you, Dewi, for your explanation about the pronunciation of morphemes in plurals. So me and Novi will continue the presentation about phonemes, the phonological units of language. So the definition of phonemes. These phonemes are the basic unit of sound and its sense and is sensed in your mind rather than spoken or heard. So basically, this phonemes is the smallest unit of sounds, and we never speak of these phonemes, but rather of speak on it. We actually just heard on it or think on our mind, right? And its phoneme has one or more sounds called allophone associated with it, which represent the actual sound being produced in various environments. So basically, in a simple way, allophone is variants of phoneme, and phoneme is the simple unit or the smallest unit of sound. So basically, phonemes may change the meaning of the word. For the example, if the word pig and big. So basically, the difference of both of the word is from the alphabet in front of the word. For the example, pig start with P and big start with B. So this is what we call as a phonemes. So it is actually can change the meaning of the word. So you have to be careful when you say something with phonemes. So that's why we have to learn about phonemes in this class. So in English, we have some phonemes such as p, b, e, s, and t. So there are like 6 phonemes in English. But difference with phonemes, allophones is the variant of the phoneme. For the example, if the phoneme p, it's actually p, we can also pronounce it like in the word pin and spin. So when we pronounce pin, there's an air comes out from our mouth. So it actually seems like there's an H after the P1. So the difference of the pronunciation itself, we call it as an allophones. So allophones is the variance of the phonemes. So next. So now we will talking about the complementary distribution. So allophones of a phoneme are in complementary distribution. They never occur in the same environments. So we put an example is like Superman and Clark Kent. So you have to know that who is Clark Kent? So Clark Kent is the normal human person, normal human version, I mean, from Superman. So they will never occur in the same environment, right? Because if he want to change to be a superhero, he will be a Superman in one environment, but if he want to be a normal person, he will change to be Clark Kent, right? So this is an example of allophones of phonemes are in the complementary distribution that it will never occur in the same environments. So next. So still about complementary distribution, the example of the writing system can help illustrate the idea of complementary distribution. So the first one, each letter of English can appear in uppercase or lowercase form, but uppercase only occurs in certain contexts, like in the beginning of the word and whenever. And in cursive, and the second one, in cursive handwriting, letters might get written differently depending on what comes before and after. And each variant or allograph is depend on the context. So let me give you an example of the cursive handwriting. What is makes it different? So it's the same like glue. When you write glue in Indonesian, we call it cursive handwriting with tulisan tegak bersambung. So when you write glue, you actually write the L1 from the bottom of the line. But when you want to write like blue, so you write L from the middle of the line. So this is the difference between the handwriting and cursive handwriting actually. So this is what complementary distribution exists in each of letter in English and also in cursive handwriting. But in English, actually the same as when we want to write something in normal handwriting. For the example, we want to write pause and toes. So it actually, there is no like different type of thing, different kind of a thing we write it. We just write O in the middle of it, but sometimes we can write O in the beginning of the word. We can write O in the middle of the word. Depends on what word that we want to write, right? So this is what we call as complementary distribution and how it impacts with our handwriting in the next. So next. When sounds are in complementary distribution, they do not contrast with each other. The replacement of one sound for the other sound will not change the meaning of the word. For the example, when you want to say spin and pin, so it actually never will not contrast with each other, right? So even if you maybe make a mistake for the pronunciation, it actually still okay because there is some difference between one word and the other word, even if there's also P in each word actually. And a phoneme is a set of phonologically similar sounds that are in complementary distribution. A set may consist of only one member, which would mean that a phoneme is only pronounced in one way. Next. Now I will going to explain about distinctive features of phonemes. For two phones or sounds or contrast, meaning there must be some difference between them. For example, the phonetic feature of voicing distinguishes S and Z that already explained by David before. For the example, if you want to say cat in plural, you will say cats. And different like bag in plural, you say bags. It looks like there's a Z in the end of the word. Different like cats, it looks like S in the end of the words. So that is the difference of this kind of phonetics. And when a feature distinguishes one phoneme from another, it is a distinctive feature or a phonemic feature. So it is just a phonemic feature if we just use one phonemes and not like a plurals of phonemes. Next. About feature values. features have two values, the positive feature and the negative feature, to indicate the presence and absence of that particular feature. For the example, B is positive voiced and P is the negative voiced. At least one feature's difference must distinguish each phoneme of a language. And next, and the last one, I will explain about non-distinctive features. When a feature is predictable by a rule for a certain class of sounds, that feature is a non-distinctive, or we can call it as redundant or predictable feature for that class. For the example, nasalization is a redundant feature for English vowels, but indistinctive for English consonants. Also, aspiration is a non-distinctive feature for voiceless stops in English. So there are two examples. And next, now about the rules of phonology will be explained by Philia. For Philia, time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Novi. So thank you for the time. I will explain about the rules of phonology. Next. So the first one is assimilation rules. Assimilation rules reflect articulation. Articulation is the spreading of phonetic features either in anticipation or in the preservation of articulatory process. For example, it is easier to lower the volume while a vowel is being produced before a nasal stop than to wait for the completion of the vowel to then lower the volume even more quickly. There are many assimilation rules in English and other languages. There is English plural and past tense morphemes and negative morphemes. Next. The second one is dissimilation rules. Language also have dissimilation rules in which a segment becomes less like another segment. It is sometimes easier to articulate dissimilar sounds. Latin suffix "a" is to form adjective dissimilate to "r" is when an "I" is in the noun and the dissimilation can be seen in the words borrowed into English. Example are anecdotal, annual, mental, penal, spiritual, and venial. Example are annular, columnar, perpendicular, similar, and velar. Next. The next one is feature changing rules. Assimilation and dissimilation are feature changing rules, but some feature changing rules are neither assimilation nor dissimilation rules. For example, adding aspiration in English does not make the vehicle stop more or less like neck-boring sounds. Next. Okay, the next one is segment insertion and deletion rules. Phonological rules may also add or delete entire segments. Adding a segment is known as presentasi. The rules for forming plural, possessive, and third-person singular agreement in English all involve an emphasis rule. Insert a or e before the plural morpheme or z when a regular noun ends in a sibilant, giving is or easy. Next. The next one is movement or metathesis rules. Metathesis rules reorder the sequence of phonemes. For some speaker, the word as is pronounced as X, and in this case, a metathesis rule reorders the S and K or in certain contexts. In Old English, the verb was action, and a historical metathesis rule switched the consonant so that most dialects of English now have the verb X. And the last one is the function of phonological rules. Phonological rules provide the phonetic information necessary for the pronunciation of utterance. Derivation. The way the phonological rules apply to the underlying phonemic representation to create the phonetic representation underlying phonemic representation. There are a aspiration rule, nasalization rule, Sewa rule, and surface phonetic representation. Okay, that's all my explain about material. So I'll return the time to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Philia for your explanation. So that is, guys, about our explanation about phonology, the sound patterns of language. I hope you guys can understand the material so you can implement the materials about phonemes and others. So thank you so much. And now it's time to us to talk about the question that you will give to our group. So I will open two sessions. So the first session just for two persons that will ask about the material. Okay, I think first Ardana question and also Ella question. So Ardana connection, I think it's actually bad. So he write the question on the comment section. And his question is, how does phonology influence language learning? If we didn't learn it, does it affect our understanding toward the text given? So that is about the Ardana's question. And now Ella, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Now I want to ask, since you mentioned that some languages use plural morphemes, especially in English, it's widely used. I want to know, are there any languages that don't have plural morphemes? They don't use it at all. If yes, state some and give examples of the words.
Okay, thank you, Ella. So I think our group needs some of time to answer
That is all.
you guys your question. So I think we need like 5 minutes before we answer the question. Thank you. Okay, guys, so first question from Adana question will be answered by Philia. So for Philia, time is yours.
Okay, thank you for the time. So I will try to answer the question from Ardana. In my opinion, phonology or sound science is a field of science that study the sound of a language in general. Language user, especially teacher and or prospective language teacher, really need to learn this sound science because language is first of a sort. Therefore, phonological Awareness in language learning has a very important role to improve reading skill, so that the language sound produced by children can be understood. So that's all answer from me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philia, for your answer for Arena's question. Yes, I think that's, I totally agree with Philia's answer that this phonemes, I mean like this phonology is actually really important, especially when you want to pronounce something. If you can't and you actually don't know how to pronounce it well, maybe you will like pronounce it in a wrong way and it will make like a bad impact to you also. So it is better to you to understand about this phonological. So I think we need a time to answer Ella's question. So we will open the second session first. So for those who wants to give us a question again, you can raise hand. Okay, Dika, you can state your question first.
Okay, thank you for the time for me. And my question is, what different about intended utterance between actual utterance? And please tell me for example. Thank you.
Okay, for Dika's question will be answered by Dewi. So Dewi, time is yours.
Okay. Hindi oh. Okay. Halo, halo. Halo.
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And utterance intended meaning may be the same or different at 6 conceptually distinct level. Level 0 is the speaker's literal meaning, the conventional meaning of the words as used by the speaker. Level 1 is the speaker's occasion meaning, the pragmatic on record intended meaning. Level 2 is the hint level, the hint level intended to be recognized as intended but off record. Level 3 is the manipulation level intended to be understood by the hearer but not to appear as intended by the speaker. Level 4 is the secret or deception level, meanings that underlie an utterance yet are not meant to be recognized. Level 5 is the subconscious or self-deception level, meanings that underlie an utterance but are not fully known even to the speaker. And utterance actual is a speech act that consists of the verbal employment of units of expression such as word and sentence notes to glossary of linguistic terms. We perform speech as act when we offer an apology, greeting, request, complaint, invitation, compliment, of refusal. That's all. Thank you. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you, Dewi, for your answer. So if you guys want to add some things, you can just raise hand. So next, I think I will answer the last question. So let me check your question again. Give me a minute. So your question is, are there any languages that do not use plural morphemes? If yes, state some and give examples.